Hello, everyone. Welcome. So good to see everyone this morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bianca Collins, the Curator of Public Programs for the Fowler Museum at UCLA. The Fowler is very pleased to present today's program as part of our World Arts Local Lives programs. This is the last of our World Movement classes in which we invite UCLA's Visual and Performing Arts Education program's talented teaching artists to share their knowledge of movement and dance practices from around the world. Today, we are joined by Arushi Singh to explore Bharatanatyam, a dance form originally practiced by hereditary performers and ritual officiants from Bahujan communities in pre-colonial southern India. Globally recognized as one of the 8 classical Indian dances, Bharatanatyam was reconstructed in the early and mid-20th century as part of India's nationalist movement against colonial rule. In this class, you will have a chance to explore 2 elements of Bharatanatyam Abhinaya, the art of expression. Hastas, which are hand gestures, and bhava, the emotional state embodied by the performer. But first, a little bit about our guest today. Arushi Singh is a Ph.D. candidate and teaching fellow in culture and performance at UCLA Department of World Arts and Culture's Dance. Her research interests lie at the intersection of South Asian performance histories and political economies of cultural production. Arushi is a trained Bharatanatyam dancer with a performance career spanning more than a decade. She has also collaborated on multiple interdisciplinary and intercultural art projects in India and LA. She is currently a guest editor for a special issue of Race and Yoga, the first peer-reviewed journal in the field of critical yoga studies, entitled South Asian Perspectives on Yoga. For today's program, I encourage you to stay on speaker view, not gallery mode, so Arushi is always front and center. I also encourage you guys to keep your cameras on, but no pressure if you feel more comfortable participating with it off. All participants will stay muted for the most part, but there will be a few opportunities for you to use the raise hand function to participate in the share back or at the end in a Q&A. When Arushi opens up the floor for folks to contribute, please use the raise hand function, which can be found by clicking participants at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then selecting the raise hand button on the bottom right-hand side of the participant window that appears. We will unmute you for a moment so you can contribute before moving on. Okay, that's it. Arushi, over to you.
Thank you, Bianca, for your introduction, and thank you, Fowler Museum and VAPA, for inviting me to participate in the World Movement series. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin today's class, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the indigenous lands we stand on. For us here in Los Angeles, we acknowledge Tongva peoples as the traditional caretakers of Towangar. I really am grateful to be able to move, breathe, and practice on Tongva land. Today's movement class will focus on a singular element of the Bharatanatyam repertoire that I believe you can safely explore at home. Even though we might not get into the technically complex aspects of the form, I really do hope you still find the class engaging and educational. All you need for today's class is either a comfortable seating position, if that's what you find comfortable, or you can also join me when I stand up. You just need a little bit of moving space, like I'm home right now, I have a little bit of moving space, so I designed the class for thinking of that in mind. And most importantly, like, bring your curiosity. I really hope that this is an engaging moment for you. So what I'm going to do is that I'll first present a short overview of the Bharatanatyam history and technique, which will take about 5 to 6 minutes. And then that will be followed by our gesture exploration for about 35 to 40 minutes. And if we do have time, at the end, that will be dedicated to your reflections and questions. Okay, so let me share my screen with you. All right. Great. All right. So what is Bharatanatyam? Bharatanatyam is based on a diverse range of dance genres, which were originally developed by the women of Devadasi communities in the Telugu and the Tamil-speaking regions of southern India since the 16th century onwards. And these women functioned as secular dance artists, courtesans, and temple workers as they were developing this technique. The movement that we are practicing today actually draws from the reconstructed version of the Bharatanatyam technique. So the form Bharatanatyam, which is today globally recognized as one of the 8 Indian classical dances, was actually reconstructed in the early and mid 20th century in India by upper class and upper caste Indians through a process that involved appropriating, reforming, and reinventing the bodily and aesthetic practices developed by the women of the Devadasi communities. And there are a lot of scholars who have written about the history of Bharatanatyam, where they do showcase the 100 years of social reform that included a 1947 law that actually criminalized the non-domestic lifestyles of these women in the Devadasi communities. And at the same time, the form switched hands to upper caste performers, venue organizers, promoters, and critics who really believed that they were uplifting the respectability of this earlier practice Bharatanatyam by aligning it with the discourses of nationalism and regionalism, because in the mid 20th century was the peak of India's anti-colonial resistance movements against the British. So what ended up happening during this moment is the form aligns itself to becoming an embodiment of India's national identity. So it was actually one of the first forms to be consecrated a classical status in the mid 20th century. And ever since then, it has come to embody India's ancient heritage. And of course, it's shape-shifted over the years based on, the explorations of individual performers as they kind of navigate these conflicts and tensions written in the form itself because of this complex history, right? So some interesting things to know about the terminology Bharatanatyam. Now, one of the things that people often talk about is that the name comes from its association with this persona called Bharata, who was actually someone who authored this Sanskrit aesthetic treatise called the Natya Shastra. And actually, Bharatanatyam's association to this dramaturgical treatise is often connected to this history of reinvention, right? The other reason why often Bharatanatyam is used is it's popularly seen as an anagram for 3 different words. So bhava meaning mood or emotion, raga meaning melody, and tala, which means rhythm, right? And natyam translates to dance. So, when you put them together, it really means a dance that's a confluence of all these 3 dramatic elements. In fact, you can use this anagram to break down the term to also learn how to pronounce it. So it's bha, ra, ta, natyam. Bha, ra, ta, natyam. This will be helpful to learn how to pronounce it for those of you who were wondering. So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to, before I talk about the technique a little bit, I want to show you an excerpt of a performance by one of my teachers, Rama Vaidyanathan, so that you start to get a sense of what the form looks like, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a small excerpt, pause, talk a little bit about what we saw, and then show a little bit more of the technique, and we're going to move forward like that, right? Okay.
ಏನು ನೇರವೇ ಸುಟಕು ಕಲಂ kutaka di kutaka ta dikina do ta di ta ri ta jam ri ta jam di ta ri ta jam ri ta jam ta ri ta jam ri ta jam di ta da ta da di ta di ta jam ri ta jam di ta di ta jam ri ta jam ta di ta jam ri ta jam di ta da ta ra ka di ta di ta jam ri ta jam di ta di ta jam ri ta jam ta di ta jam ri ta jam di ta da ta ra di ta di ta jam ri ta jam di ta di ta jam ri ta jam ta di ta jam ri ta jam di ta da ta ra ka di ta di ta jam ri ta jam di ta di ta jam ri ta jam ta di ta jam ri ta jam di ta da ta ra di ta di ta jam ri ta jam di ta di ta jam ri ta jam.
All right, so let's just talk a little bit about what we just saw. So what we just saw was a part of the technique which is often called Rita. This part of the technique is the rhythmic, abstract, non-representational, non-narrative form of the technique. What the dancer in this part of the technique is focusing on is really the execution of precise movements of different parts of the body. So as you saw, there's this complex thing happening at the level of the body where all kinds of body parts, from the minor limbs like the eyes, the head, the neck, are moving along with all the major limbs like the arms, the torso, the legs, the footwork, right? So the idea, the goal in some sense of this part of the technique is really this precise execution of this non-thematic dance. And, when we are training, like all these different movements of the body are actually already codified. So you have to kind of learn all these minutiae, movements when you're training. Another thing you would have noticed is there's obviously musical accompaniment on the stage, which complements the dancing, right? There's a violinist, there's a vocalist, there's a flautist who offer the melodic framework for the dance. And then of course, the mridangam, which is a percussion instrument, which complements the footwork, the complex footwork that the dancer is doing, right? Okay, so let's watch a little bit more to get a sense of another aspect of the technique, which actually becomes relevant for what we're learning today. Keep playing this and keep watching this on and on, but we're going to stop here. And let me just, it's hard to, obviously break this down so like, very simplistically, but I'm going to try. So this part of the technique is actually Abhinaya. right? This is the expressive choreography section of an item in the Bharatanatyam repertoire. It focuses on representations, narratives, facial expressions. So you would have observed that like the performer is utilizing hand gestures, the expressions of their face, traveling, traveling through space in order to dramatize the sung poetic text. So what they are doing in this particular portion is really just going with what is being sung, and they're trying to embody certain emotional states and moods, right? And really painting a picture for the spectator and telling a story, right? And so this is the part of the technique where hand gestures come into play, which we're going to be playing around with today, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to key into hasta mudras, and I'm just going to show you one more slide, after which we're going to start moving, which is that hasta mudras in the, let me just move to the next slide. Yeah, hasta mudras in the Bharatanatyam repertoire also codify, like most movement vocabulary. And, there are 28 single hand gestures and 23 double hand gestures, right? So obviously we're not going to be able to go through all of them, but we're going to pick one of them to play around with just how one gesture can produce a lot of complexity and can be used as a trigger to embody certain emotional states. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to move into exploring and playing a little bit. All right, so before we begin, let's just do a quick warm-up. If you find it more comfortable to be seated, you can keep sitting on your seats. Otherwise, you can move your seat over. Just find a comfortable spot somewhere in your house. Oh, wait. Let me move this like this so that I can see you all. All right. Maybe I should sit too so that you can see my head. All right. So let's take a deep breath, okay, first, just to warm up. Take an inhale, hold for 3 seconds, exhale. Let's breathe one more time. Inhale, hold for 3 seconds, exhale. Now hold your hands to the side. Make a gentle fist. And just lightly move your fist up and down. The idea is to just loosen the wrist a little bit. And then you can move the wrist clockwise. And then anti-clockwise. Let's move our shoulders. One round. And then anti-clockwise again. Yeah, just if you're holding any tension because of all the sitting and staring into the computer, just let this be the moment you just release that tension. Now, take your hands and move them around. Whew. Don't forget to keep breathing. And then anti-clockwise. Great. Just do one last stretch. Just stretch out your forearm muscles. All right. So what we're going to do for the next few moments is this mirroring exercise. Before we go into it, I just wanted to say that when you're holding any gesture and going through the exercise, if you feel some kind of discomfort, maybe attend to what that is. Like, is it because you're becoming aware of a new muscle in your body? It could be interesting to like attend to that muscle awareness, or, you know, if it is really painful, please come out of it. Just shake your hand out, and then you can join us back in wherever we are in the movement exercise. So just don't like be in excruciating pain and keep holding, right? Okay. So one of the gestures, we're going to play with one gesture today. All exercises will be focused on that. One of the gestures that the performer did was the pataka hasta. So what I want you to do is I want you to stretch out your 4 fingers and stick them together, right? And you can use your left hand to guide your fingers, right? And bend your thumb and stick it to the side of your hand, right? So this is the first hand gesture in the single hand gesture, like the pataka. And you can hold it this way, your arms are parallel to the floor. All right, so we're gonna do a mirroring exercise. So just mirror me and just attend to any change in instructions, right? Okay. So one of the things that the performer did was move their hand around to direct the attention towards their surrounding area. So let's just do that a little bit. Let's just feel what that is like. And make sure when your hand is going behind, you maintain the clarity of the gesture. So don't like loosen it out. So yeah, if you feel the pain, it's probably because your body is becoming aware of a new muscle. All right. Now what I want you to do next in the next round is to add an element. I want your eyes to begin following the trajectory of your hand. So let the gaze follow the hand traveling. Let's do that one more time and just sense, does the gaze now following your hand do something different in your bodily condition? Now, in the next round, I want you to add another element. What if you were to look at your hand sadly? What does that do to your breath? What does that do to the quality of your hand movement? What if you were to look at your hand confused now? That you're confused at your hand. What if you were happy with your hand? Like, what does that look like? All right, let's loosen our arm out for a second. I know that must be a lot. Yes. So what I'm trying to hopefully, I'm hoping you're sensing this already, is that, because I could not come and see what you all were doing, but, you know, it's not just the hand gesture itself. There are other parts of the body that are engaged, right, for us to kind of switch different emotional states. So it depends on the gaze. So the hand gesture works with the gaze. It works with the facial expressions to then allow you to kind of inhabit an emotional state, right? I hope that that gave you a sense of that, right? So another thing that I wanted to do is, what if like we were to play with the quality of our movement? How does that help us to switch on into another emotional state? So for instance, one if we're gonna come back to the same gesture, right? One of the other ways in which the performer used this gesture was to say, come here. So they did this, come here, right? Now, let's explore different ways of saying come here by just shifting the quality of the movement, right? So, gently say come here. Curtly say come here. Perhaps there's like a jerkier movement, right, involved. What if you were to hesitatingly say come here? What would the quality of your movement look like? Maybe it reduces speed. Maybe it is more jagged. I don't know, like just do it one more time to see what that might look like, being hesitant and asking someone to come here. Yeah, great. So not only the gaze and the facial expressions go with the gesture, but also the quality of movement, right? That help you express a certain thing you want to tell somebody, right? Now, one more thing that influences what you might want to communicate to your viewer is how the gesture works in relationship to the body. Is it far away? So I want you to just mirror. I'm going to keep saying, I just want you to mirror. It's not about perfecting anything. It's just about kind of embodying some of these movement principles, right? So what does this mean? How does this shift what you're trying to communicate? What about this? This. 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 Right? So based on where the hand is also positioned in relationship to different body parts and how they react to that change, can communicate multiple things, right? So at this point, what I want you to do is I'm going to take a moment for us to explore something together, just for 2-3 minutes, so that you begin to kind of maybe embody yourself, like what some of these things we're trying to do right now. So what I want us to do is, for the next 2-3 minutes, use this gesture, pataka, to come up with embodying 2 moods, right? And keep in mind, while doing that, keep in mind some of these movement principles you can utilize. How would you embody this mood using this gesture in combination with your eyes, in combination with your facial expressions, the quality of the movement, or where the gesture is positioned, right? So you can use a combination of these, or you can just choose to play with one. But the idea is that I really want you to explore how to use this gesture to embody just 2 moods. I'm going to give you 2 to 3 minutes to explore that. If you need to switch off your camera because you're uncomfortable seeing other people looking at you, you can do that. But I'll keep the timer. When we come back, I'm probably going to encourage a couple of people to share. Again, you can use the raise hand function if you want to share, and we're going to proceed that way. Is that clear? Can you give me a thumbs up if that's clear? All right, great. So just take 2 to 3 minutes to use the pataka hasta to embody 2 emotional states. Great. take one more minute to kind of wrap up what you might be exploring. Just don't think too much about it. It's just about you exploring and playing with something you just are beginning to learn. All right, let's come back. It would be nice if you could switch on your videos. Great. Is there anyone who is courageous enough to share what they explored? And please raise your hand if you would like to do that. And you will be muted. I think Bianca will mute you. Come on, let's share. Raimundo, yes.
Okay, it's quite simple.
Right.
All right, thank you for this. I'm definitely feeling a little bit of a strain.
Right, just massage it a little bit if you feel the strain, yeah.
So I tried to continue with the invitation. So
right.
I need to follow the hand and then take it away.
Yes. Yes.
And I came up with another one almost as if I was bidding farewell, but just changed the direction.
Yes. So that's great. So what did you, so one second, Raimundo. So what did you notice? Like what were you, can you just quickly talk about the intentionality of what you were doing and what you noticed?
Yes, immediately trying to keep everything precise and executing. I realized that it was no longer just about getting my hand out, but also my eyes following the motion within, but then also with outside of my body as well.
Yes, great.
And also I did make an adjustment when I started to feel a bit of a strain and literally just release that tension.
That's great, thank you. So yeah, I mean, that's amazing that you could feel all of that in just doing this exploration for 2-3 minutes. What you just directed us to is something that Bharatanatyam dancers actually explore, because it's not just about the gesture itself, but what that triggers in the rest of the body, and also what the gesture triggers in the surrounding space, right? Because often performers are using this gestural vocabulary to dramatize, a story, and also draw the attention of the viewer towards spaces or objects or other characters on the stage. So it's really interesting that you had that somatic experience of something that Bharatanatyam dancers are often attempting to embody. So let's go ahead and explore one more thing, right? Now, we've already talked about how the gesture itself combines with all these different aspects of, other body parts to, kind of initiate the dancer into an emotional state or a feeling, right? But the gestures itself, of course, symbolize certain meanings, right? They symbolize a person, thing, a place, depending on the positionality of the fingers, the thumb, and the palm. So they themselves carry meaning. So when I was training, I had to learn all these prescribed uses of the hand gesture itself, right? So what we're going to do next is also go through some of the prescribed uses of this gesture, just so that you get a sense of what are the different variations of this gesture in which a performer, that the performer has a reference to. And also, this will also build on some of the things we've already explored, right? Okay, so let's come back to our baseline, which is this Pataka Hasta. Okay, so just mirror me, right? And just attend to what I'm saying. So the Pataka Hasta is used to often refer to a tree. Right? Let's do that again. So what you might be seeing is that it's not just about me doing this. In itself, it means nothing, this gesture, right? You have to kind of curve a space with, create this curve. Maybe your body moves with this curve. Maybe you move your arm this way to show like what the tree is doing, like, oh, it's because there's a breeze. It also like gesture towards what might be happening around, like, oh, there's a breeze blowing, right? Perhaps. The Pataka Hasta is also used to refer to a river, so the undulation of the hands, right? So right now, probably the river is flowing smoothly, but it could also be a choppy river because of the movement quality, right? Now the Pataka Hasta is also used to refer to someone sleeping. Now, of course, right now I'm sitting down, but often like the performer would do something like this and use the other hand also to showcase being asleep, right? So you're using another part of the body in combination with the gesture. The Pataka Hasta could be used to refer to the sky. Now you could just direct someone's attention to it, but maybe with your eyes you could also express what you feel about the sky right now, right? Oh wow, the sky is beautiful today. Oh, I don't like, look at the smoke in the sky. I mean, us in LA, like the skies are not beautiful right now, right? So there are all these different uses of the gesture itself. And of course, again, like all these other principles have to work in order for the effect of the gesture, right? Now, I'm just gonna quickly look at the time. All right, so what I actually wanna do next is that I wanna do another exploration exercise. What I want us to do is I want you to choose a couple of the prescribed uses that we just explored. So the tree, the river, sleeping, the sky, right? And what I want you to do is compose a very small story. So I know this is like, we're trying to do a lot of things, but it could be a fun exercise to do, which is at the end of the day, the function of the expressive choreography is to narrate a story, right? And the performer often does that by combining different gestures. Of course, we're just using one. And so what I want us to do is just pick one or three. I guess you can't choose one, like two or three, and like come up with a story. It could be anything. It could be abstract. It could be about your feeling, a feeling that you have, or it could be about something happening outside your door, but just a very small story that you dramatize using just three of the prescribed uses. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Can I have a thumbs up? All right, great. So just take a couple of minutes. Again, don't think too much about it. It's about playing. And we'll come back and probably someone else can also share. All right, go ahead. All right, let's take another minute to finish what we're doing. All right, let's come back. Who would like to share this time? Would you raise your hand, use the raise hand function if you'd like to share? Just anybody. No one? Yeah. Should I call someone out? Come on, guys. It's about playing. Yes, great.
All right, so mine's a really simple story. It starts with a small river that just gets bigger, and the seedling, this little tree, just grows.
Great.
It starts small, and there's a baby tree. And then the river gets bigger, and the tree gets bigger.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Did you want to talk about like what you were thinking while creating this story?
I was just trying to put everything together. Originally, I was thinking of like the river getting so big that it destroys the tree and the tree like falls over to sleep, but it didn't really flow. So I ended up cutting that
You're
out.
thinking about composition.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, it's great. Like just you doing that, like doing this and then showing the tree and doing that again and showing a bigger tree offers me a trajectory of the growth, right? Even though you explained it, I could tell that there was something about growth happening in that story. So that was very clear. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so you know, we don't have a lot of time, but something that I did want to preface is that this is just one gesture, right? We explored today. Imagine there's like a whole ton of gestures in this vocabulary set, and there's a universe of possibilities because of that, right? So we use just this one gesture. It has its own prescribed uses. Also, you have to combine that with all these other movement principles in order to dramatize, a specific story. So imagine then if you were to train in this form, you're learning all these gestures and how they work and how they're operationalized in relationship to all the other movement principles and vocabulary, right? So I just wanted to give a sense of, one of these unique qualities of the form, which is that every part of the body is involved in expressing something, right? I think that's something that I really find unique and pleasurable about the form is that just with a little gesture or just the little movement of the eye, I can just communicate a whole world of experiences, right? So yeah, this is what I wanted to share with you today. I don't know how much time we have, Bianca, but maybe we could have 2-3 minutes of people asking questions or reflecting on what I shared with them today. If there are any questions, I don't know.
We've got time for some questions for sure.
Okay, great. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and Bianca will unmute you.
Question. I noticed that the feet are used as a percussion instrument in the film excerpts that we saw. Are the hands ever used as a percussion, either via clapping or snapping of fingers or playing cymbals or other things of that sort to create a rhythm?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, I mean, there might be clapping, but I would say that often the movement of the hands are percussive already. So it doesn't mean that you're literally clapping or, you know, you're not always creating rhythms like that. But I think that just in the movement of the gesture itself, as it complements the music, there is a rhythmic pattern being created, right? So for instance, I can show this to you. So I'll just do this. So just in me doing something like, there's like already a beat, right? So I'm not clapping. So the music could be doing tam, di tam, dai, da dai, 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 right? So the vocalist might be saying that, giving that beat, but the hands are going with the beat, and you know, a rhythm is being created, right? Is that clear? All right, thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question about the gestures themselves. So the one you taught us, that one like can symbolize tree or river or like sky. I was wondering if they were grouped together, like that's like nature based, or if there's one that's like, I don't know, a different like category of gesture.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So they're not only nature based. So, like for instance, the Pataka Hasta can also mean to refer to a king, because this might mean crown. I don't know if you can see me. I think I'm just gonna move my seat away. But right, like if I was to do that, that refers to a crown. It can also be used to reject something, right? So just like the movement of the head away and the hand, right, would mean to reject something. And of course, like we haven't obviously explored any other form, any other gesture, but there are so many gestures. Again, the other thing is like combining the hand gestures, right? So we just did a single hand. So if I was to also bring another one like that, I could use it to say no, right? I could use it to show the space around. I could use it to refer to a drum. So, you know, you first usually in training, you usually begin with the single hand gestures and then you start developing. And like I said, like the uses, the prescribed uses of the hands are anywhere between 6 to like 20 different variations for just one hand. So Pataka Hasta means 20 different things. This one, which is called the Tripataka, means 5, 6, 7 different things that you have to learn. But of course, I think that, you know, you can also create your own meanings and understandings of the hand once you're trained, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any more questions? Or Bianca, would you want to take over? I don't know how much time we're left.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
With regards to the vocalist, and I'm taking it as a narrator, what's the role and importance, and can there be movement and dance without the vocalist being a part of it? And second question, for us that we enjoyed and we want to learn more, whether it is a dance company, a dancer, perhaps your own practice, how can we continue to learn more?
Great, thank you, Raimundo. So about the question of music accompaniment, like in the traditional performance of the repertoire, usually music accompaniment is complementary with the dancing. So in fact, in my training, I not only learned the dance technique, but I also learned the music, the Carnatic music scale. And in order to understand you know, the rhythmic structure, the melodic structure of the dance. So they're integrally linked. When it comes to experimentation, so many dancers over the years have used Bharatanatyam as a baseline to, push their explorations. And in those kind of contexts, they have not used music. So they've really tried to kind of challenge a separation between the music and the dance, but those are often a lot of contemporary dancers who are interested in playing with just the vocabulary itself and extending that. In terms of like performers to look at, etc., I could actually send a list. I don't know, if you want to look at Bharatanatyam performers, a lot of the content is on YouTube already. You could look at Rama Vaidyanathan, whose work I just showed you. You could look at the work of Malika Sarukai. She's also a Bharatanatyam dancer. If you want to look at the work of people who are experimenting with the form, you could look at Padmini Chettur, whose work uses Bharatanatyam as a baseline, but in order to do so many other really interesting things with architecture and space. Because as you can see, the form is so much about the anatomical structure. It's about an architecture. It's an architectural form. Often, the form has been built and developed in reference to actual Indian sculpture. So you can see the sculptural, quality of the form itself. So a lot of people who've experimented with the form have really tried to explore that. So you can look at Padmini Chettur. And it could be an interesting, I don't know, maybe if Bianca would want me to share like a list of links, I would love to share that if people want to continue practicing and learning about the form. Yeah.
I'm happy to pass along some information that you might want to share with everyone, Arushi.
Great.
So awesome. We got some thumbs up too. Well, thank you so much, Arushi, for leading us through that lesson and being so clear and concise in your guidance. I can tell people really enjoyed it. Yes, thank you. Just so everyone knows, this program has been recorded and it'll be available on our website and on our Instagram next week for you guys to revisit and share with your friends. Thank you all for joining us. I hope that you'll join us again. Details for the next program will be found on the closing slide. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye.